I have to fight too hard. And then that puts other things into perspective, like race and, skin color. I'm not saying that those things don't exist, but this is just my perspective of it. That's the way I look at it. And the way I look at it tells me, you know what, this is just a challenge. It's just a matter of time. Keep being dedicated, keep being persistent, keep being consistent, and you will overcome it. Now, some of those challenges I have seen, let's say, for example, in terms of business, is the rules and regulations I did mention to you about, which can be better if we decide to make change it, keeping personal interests aside and taking into consideration what ordinary people in this country deserve.
Welcome to Show Your Receipts, where we believe if you can see it, you can be it. Receipts are evidence or proof that something has occurred. Our guests are evidence that Black excellence is alive and well. They will be sharing their receipts on how they've been able to accomplish so much in their life. I'm your host, Tony Jackson. Let's get started. Welcome to Show Your Receipts, where we believe if you can see it, you can be it. Today we have an amazing guest. His name is Gabriel Njinimbot. He is running for Congress in the 4th District of Maryland in 2024. He immigrated to America from Cameroon over 2 decades ago, starting out washing dishes at a seafood restaurant, and later became a database analyst and ended up working for local government as well as Fortune 500 companies. In the meantime, he attended CLS, opened a couple of small businesses, and has published 5 books. And we have him here today. Welcome, Gabriel. I'm excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Tony. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. And so let's jump right into it, Gabriel. Please share with me a little bit about what you got going on right now. Obviously, you're running for Congress. I know that you're also an entrepreneur, a small business owner. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, what sparked you to want to run for Congress?
I've had this spirit of giving back to the community for as young as I was like 10. And I did work in Cameroon while I was there. And even when I came here, I bought certain things, school supplies, hospital supplies, clothes and shoes, and took it back to Cameroon where I came from, because I know exactly how I left my homemates, my classmates, my neighbors, and those in churches and the hospitals in which I was born in. And, coming to America, life was a little bit better for me than it was back in Cameroon. So I thought it's always a good thing. And my mom did teach me that, like, always give back to the community when you don't have to wait till you have too much. And so, it's always been a thing for me to give back to the community and fight for those who are struggling to make life better for themselves, because I've lived it myself.
Wow. That is amazing. And we definitely need more people like you to be representing as a country. And so that's exciting. But I definitely want to touch on a little bit of that more as we go on. I would love to hear a little bit more about your experience as an entrepreneur and the businesses that you've been involved in, what sparked you to become an entrepreneur, how you started, obstacles that you faced along the way. Would you mind sharing with me a little bit of that, Gabe?
Absolutely. It's actually a long story enough to be in a book, which I actually wrote.
Oh, wow.
Yes. In my autobiography, From Meager Beginnings, The Power of Dedication, Persistence, and Consistency, and you can find this on Amazon, I detailed, quite well what brought me into entrepreneurship. And it was some sort of a coincidence, an accident also, because I had a vehicle I bought and I wanted to do some modifications on it. And it took me to a garage. And, I went there the first day, 2-3 weeks down the road, the guy wanted to sell it. And I said, look, my background is IT. My brain is not wired to be a mechanic. But he talked me into buying this mechanic shop. And I eventually took out a loan and put it down, it wasn't really a small amount of money. And knowing that my background is not, auto mechanic, it was one of the craziest things I did. And this happened on January 15th of 2008. I can't even forget the date, right? January 15th of 2008, I wrote this big check I think it was more than $35,000. Gave it to him. And within the first 6 months, it was a complete nightmare. Like, what the heck did you just do? You're not a mechanic. You bought a mechanic shop. Your background is IT. You don't know how to fix cars. You don't even leave. You don't even stay in the garage. How the hell did you get into all of this, right? Long story short, I tried to sell this place for even $5 and nobody would buy it.
Wow.
Because January and March, it's very cold here in Maryland. Businesses are slow. People are waiting for taxes before they can spend money. And so I had to pay the guy who sold the garage to me, was working for me, to pay the rent, pay him, and other business bills. And it was a complete nightmare. I wanted to just get rid of it. But I'll get to tell you more of the story as we go down the road. But it was really a terrible experience. Up until June 28th of that same year, I decided to transform the mechanic shop into a tire shop. Same store, that same garage, which could take me or sold vehicles, into a tire shop. And that's how we went from the tire shop for a couple of years. And then we opened a second location based off of the proceeds of the first one. And down the road, the tire shop took a nosedive because everyone in the neighborhood had a tire shop. And so that proceeds went down. And then we decided to transform the tire shop into a ballroom where we do weddings and so on.
Wow, there's so much there that you just laid out, Gab. So first of all, the confidence. Let's talk about that. Your background is IT. Your background is not entrepreneur. You're a corporate guy. You're doing a thing. You got a great job. You decide to make the jump to entrepreneurship. What gave you that confidence to make that leap with the obstacles that you had, that you were facing, not knowing about cars, not knowing about mechanics? How did you do? What gave you that belief in yourself?
I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur from the get-go. I mean, I was in corporate for so many years, but I've always wanted to be an independent person, have my own business and decide what hours I have to work and things which is, if you look at it, anybody who owns a business, there's no such thing as just doing things the way you want. But I've always wanted to be someone who, even though in corporate, just be able to make my own decisions and run my own show, run my own business, and take care of the family. But then what made me to take that leap, despite the odds that was against me, was the fact that I sampled 10 people. Because it was a move that I wasn't 100% sure about. I sampled 10 people, say, hey, here's this garage. It costs this much money. The guy who's selling it to me wants to work for me. What do you think I should do? 9 out of 10 people tell me not to do it. 9 out of 10 said don't, because your background is not auto mechanic. You don't work there. You work 25 minutes away from that shop. There's never going to be a day that you're going to be able to replace a mechanic if they don't come to work. So don't do it. But I'm that one person who, unfortunately, when I make my mind to do something, if I put my mind to it, I have to take it to the finish end. So the naysaying actually pushed me even more to take that giant step into opening that shop. And since then, it's one of the things that has always inspired me to do things that people don't want me to do. I don't know how to deal with challenges that are not really challenging as such. If nobody wants to do it, and as we go on the course of the interview, I will tell you more stories of more challenging stuff I've gotten into when it comes to entrepreneurship, which everybody has told me not to do, but it always turns out very good. And it just supports what the saying that says it's nothing good that comes easy.
Absolutely. And you also mentioned one thing that was very interesting when you're talking about the first business. Started as a mechanic shop, then you changed it into a tire shop, then you opened another tire shop, and then you had to pivot again and change it into a ballroom and event planning space. What gave you the
Correct.
idea to continue to keep making these adjustments? And how did you come up with ballroom event space at the end?
So that's an interesting question. What made me to pivot in these businesses is that, as the saying goes, you can walk and chew gum, right? I always like to multitask. But at the same time, I watch the trend of what's happening. So when I opened the tire shop, the very first one, I was probably there were probably just two of us in the 20-mile radius on Baltimore Avenue back in 2008. But by 2012, I literally drove around and counted. There were 17 used tire stores.
Wow.
One alone from Jessup to College Park, there was 17.
Yeah, so you know what you were doing. They had to copy.
Yeah. So it's just about time. Your sales are gonna go down because there's a lot of competition. It's used tires. It's not unique. It's everybody can do it, right? So I'm thinking in my mind, what else could be that business that's not too many of them around? And almost immediately it came to my mind that there's not many ballrooms around. I literally scan around. There's not many ballrooms. And in this community, people always have events, left and right, up and down the chain. If it's not a baby shower, it's a wake. If it's not a wake, it's a graduation ceremony. If it's not a graduation ceremony, it's a birthday party. If it's not a birthday party, it's always something, something. So when the sales went down, I said, rather than go looking for another 5,000 square foot space to set up a ballroom, how about I just convert this into a ballroom? Because I have two of those locations and I just leave one of them for a tire shop and the other one can be a street ballroom. And so that's how I converted the first one into a ballroom. And then the second tire shop that we opened just a mile up the street, literally 1 mile up the street, it was a 4,300 square foot space with quite some space in the outdoors. So what I did was, in that little 4,300 square foot space, I opened up a computer classroom in the biggest space in the back. There was a tax and title service for the state of Maryland in one portion of it. There was a notary service in that same building. And there was a youth ball franchise in that same building. And on Sundays, when I'm not teaching computers, there is a church in the room where the computer. So we maximized that 4,200 square foot space to the brim. And believe it or not, it kept me going. And I was still working full time when all this was happening.
Wow.
So to answer your question as to why did I pivot, it was two things. One, I noticed the trend and the sales as to how much business was doing, and perfectly looked for a time to switch. That way I don't spend too much time in the business that's not doing so well. And so that's number one. And number two, I just like to try different things. This is the United States of America, where you could try what you want, right? You think about something, you try it. If it doesn't work, you move to the other thing. I mean, when I was in Cameroon, I tried different things, but here it's completely different. And so take advantage of the fact that you're in one of the most powerful countries in the world and do the things that you couldn't do when you were in the other country.
Let's touch on that, Gabe. So you mentioned the whole idea of taking advantage of the opportunities here in the U.S. Talk to me about I guess if we have somebody who's watching this and they are aspiring to be an entrepreneur, and maybe they've lost the American dream. They've lost the belief. Ironically enough, it seems like that belief burns brighter in people who immigrate from other countries. But talk to me, what advice would you have for someone who is here in the U.S. who may not have the belief in themselves that they can go start their own business, may not have the belief that opportunities are still unlimited? What advice or what thoughts would you have for somebody like that?
I would tell them, because maybe for me, it's a little bit different because I can look at two things, one, Cameroon, and I look at here. But let's assume that, that this person who's watching and listening to us right now doesn't know the other side of the story, which is Cameroon, or it's never been to a third world country or in a position where there are not that many resources or opportunities to start a business. What I would say is that if you were in the United States of America, you cannot afford to give up on your dreams. I actually wrote a book about, and the title of this book is it's on Amazon, is how to turn small resources into big dreams. Because there's this idea, there's this notion, and it's more so conventional, that you want to wait and raise hundreds of thousands of dollars before you start to run a business. And in some cases, you might need to do that. But I always liken running a business or starting a business to a newborn baby. When you married or have a kid, as young as they are, you don't think about how this kid is going to eat 5-10 years from today. You just take it one step at a time, and that there's never going to be a day you're going to let this kid die of hunger. That's how I look at the business. If you think of an idea, start it. Fortunately, you are in this country where you can think about a business and start it without paying a bribe or without being concerned that someone's going to knock you down or burn it down for whatever reason. We in this country that we have a lot of safety measures in place, a lot of opportunities. So what I would tell you is, if you think about opening a small business, I don't care what it is. And I started off, I told you the story of how I started off. In fact, I wanted to start a business about picking up bottles and selling them for 5 cents each bottle. And eventually putting it together and opening up a much bigger business. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you're here and you're thinking about starting something, start it. Don't wait. If 10 people were to tell you no, guess what? You're the one who has to begin it, not anybody else, because you know yourself better than anybody else, right? One of the chapters in one of the books I wrote is follow your instincts. Is one of the most powerful things that most human beings possess, but they don't know how to use it, is follow your instincts. Whatever your instinct tells you, you go for it. And so listening to this, don't be discouraged. If you have something in mind, start it. Don't think about how is it going to grow. Just think about it as the little baby you just had. That baby has to grow. That baby has to eat. That baby is going to fall sick and they're going to take him to the hospital. And you cannot watch this kid be homeless or hungry or go without clothes. Just look at it that way.
Man, that is amazing. Gabe, I would love to put a link in the description of your book so people can click on and they can have the link to your Amazon book. So you mentioned like 3 or 4 of them already. I mean, this is amazing. Of the whole intro, we forgot to put published author and really give you kudos for that. So that's amazing, the books that you've written. I know you talked about actually starting other businesses. So after you did the mechanic business that turned into the tire shop, that turned into the event space planning, are there any other businesses that you'd like to share in any life lessons that we could pull out of your experience building those businesses?
Absolutely. There's a ton of it, which again, I wrote another book explaining how I feel about entrepreneurship and what could be done to encourage many more people to jump into entrepreneurship, because there's a lot of people who want to start and own their own small business. And one of the things I know, in most jurisdictions, in most counties or cities or municipalities, they can loosen up the rules and regulations they have about starting a small business and still maintain the building codes or inspections or regulations that they have in place. But right now, it's so rigid and so difficult that once you explain to someone what process it takes for you to have a legitimate ballroom with all the licensing and permits, it just, for someone who is not really strong or determined or really serious about starting a business, they're not going to start it in the first place, because it's literally like going through the eye of a needle to get an established ballroom, which is legit. And on the other hand, which I say this, which is kind of funny, but it's much easier for you to get a gun permit than for you to get a license and liquor. And that's when I win the Congress, I want to make sure that these things, it should be the other way around, right? Make it easy for someone to open up a small business, be a little bit more relaxed while keeping into consideration public safety and safety of individuals or groups of people in an assembly room. make it easy for anybody who wants to start up a business and make it more difficult to buy a gun. Because literally, you take in 3 months, you could obtain 3 different guns if you like. But to obtain a permit for a liquor license will take you a minimum of a year. When I'm talking about minimum of a year, because I have one, it took me 13 months to get one. Shouldn't be that long, but the complications surrounding it makes it extremely difficult and discouraging for anyone who, much less someone who was born here, much less someone who came from Cameroon with $100 on him and struggling to integrate in a community that's 12,000 miles away from their home. And I know a lot of people who are here today who want to start a business. And I've encouraged a lot of people to start many more ballrooms because I know they're not enough. I give them the blueprint, but reading through it, it's very complicated. So those experiences I literally wrote them in the book titled, Be Your Last Line of Defense and Your Naysayer's Greatest Surprise. Because when people tell you that you can't do these things because of these strict and rigid rules and regulations, you can say, you know what? No, I am not going to listen to that. I will go through it. And I've been through it several times with the county, fought a little couple of fights with them and pushed through it and opened those businesses. But I think that it could be better than what it is right now. Make it easy for them to open up the small business, because people like to open and run small businesses, which actually is the backbone of what keeps this country going.
That's right. Yeah, you mentioned your run for Congress, and obviously you have a very strong entrepreneurial background. And in my personal opinion, even more significant, you have a small business background. So it's very relatable to the average everyday person. What do you feel like is the importance and the impact of small business ownership in a community, in a society, in a country? Why is it beneficial to have more small business owners, and how does that help our communities?
It's something that in the course of me campaigning and talking to people, one of the things I decided to do amongst visiting schools and fire stations and police districts is the fact that I say this because I've been to a lot of small business owners, small businesses in and around the district. I'm talking about tons of them. And statistically, if you were to pull out all the small businesses on one street in District 4, I'm just going to use District 4, right? It literally could cripple the district.
Wow.
Literally. Yes. Because look at all the liquor stores, right? They're small business owned. Look at all some of the groceries, little groceries, mom-up grocery stores. Look at the food stores. There's just too many small businesses run, in and around the district that if you were to pull out and say, oh, you know what? No more small businesses. Let's make it very difficult for small businesses to open. You literally cripple the entire district. The flip side of it is, look around and tell me which Fortune 500 companies are opening in a small district like District 4, besides the federal government. And if you also look at on the employment side, for one, I have employed several people as a small business owner. Right now, I do have employees, from janitors to security guards to DJs to people who make food, prepare food, and so on. In fact, I have a story to tell of a guy. He was basically homeless with a 6-year-old and his wife. They went door to door, knocking on small businesses, looking for something to do. And being a person of color, stressed out and looking really tired, nobody's willing to entertain those kind of people looking for a job sometimes. And much less, they're not going to go knock on a Fortune 500 door to look for a job. They're going to run to a small business. Fortunately, they came to my small business, and I started him off by just letting him pick up trash outside and mop the floor and anything else that showed up that he could do. And from that point, he was able to feed his kid. He was able to afford to buy food and some medication when the kid was not well. Now, if you look across the district, there's so many people having the same experience as this young fellow. Think about if I wasn't existing as a small business and many other small businesses that are auto shops, mechanic shops, furniture stores, and things like that. The employment situation in the district, in the state, or even in the country would not look very good. I hear them read the statistics all the time of labor employment went up this quarter by a couple millions. A good majority of those employment is done by small business owners. And it's very significant because the more people get employed, the less they're on the streets, the less crime we have, and so on. The less police officers we have outside, the less complaints we have, the less 911 calls we have. So small businesses play a significant role in the economy of not just the district or the state, but the entire country, which is one of, if you look on my priorities on the things I'm rooting for and fighting for when I get in office, is increased entrepreneurship, because I know precisely what importance it has, not just to me as a person and my family, but to the neighborhood, to the economy in terms of taxes, in terms of creating employment and jobs and so on. So it's about time government really do more than it's doing right now. I actually suggest that they should put some of the money we use to fight wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and all those places, just give it to the small business owners, and let's start from home, building our own economy through the small business owners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you mentioned, we've been talking about entrepreneurship. I want to start to touch on and discuss education here for a second. Obviously, it seems as though education was the springboard to be able to launch you in entrepreneurship. I know we kind of brushed past it a little bit, but the fact that you were able to write a $35,000 check and that you were able to get lending, that's an credit to the great career that you had. And that career in IT, I'm assuming, has a foundation in education in school. And so talk to me about your educational journey, both in Cameroon and in the U.S., and how that prepped you and got you into the IT field.
Education in Cameroon was really tough, very tough, because my parents didn't have a chance to go to even see the four walls of a second grade. None of them. Wow. They were not lucky. They could barely write anything. But what came out of that was they sacrificed everything to make sure that we have some kind of education. I remember in Cameroon, I missed the first year of college because of $100. There was no $100 to pay for my tuition. I'm talking about the whole year tuition was $100 in Cameroon money. But I couldn't make it that first year. And the second year, I almost didn't make it until that sold the only chainsaw we had at home to be able to pay my tuition, buy some of my school supplies, beds, and then I went to college. So going to college by selling a chainsaw, life is not going to be that easy for the next 4 years. And literally, it was really tough throughout the 4 years in school. There was no cell phones at the time. There were times when I got so sick, got admitted into a neighboring hospital, and my parents did not know at all. There was no way to find out because they were hundreds of kilometers away. There was no way to find out. If I were to send a letter, handwritten letter, it was going to take a month maybe to get home.
Wow.
I had time to find out that he was sick. Maybe he was dead. I don't know. But throughout college, I tried my best to make sure that I graduated from college. There was a Christmas holiday I remember so well. I wasn't even able to go home. I stayed home throughout the holiday, the Christmas holiday, and just continued school until I graduated with a second upper class degree. And when I graduated with a second upper class degree in educational administration, I couldn't go any further. So I decided to buy clothes and sell it on the streets of the university I graduated from. I sold clothes and so many other things. And we used to walk for 7 miles each way to school on foot.
Wow.
And I had no shoes in some cases. My mom used to make fun of me that the reason why my legs, I have a size 14, is because I didn't wear shoes for a very long time. Wow. And so my foot just kept growing and growing. But despite all of that, it was typical because a lot of my friends in the neighborhood were experiencing the same things because of the way the Cameroon is set up, or was set up at least at the time. But when I did graduate from college, I was interested in learning more about computing. And so self-learning, I self-taught myself computers. At that time, it was WordPerfect and Lotus Notes. For anybody who did computers in the 90s, WordPerfect and Lotus and DBase 4. DB is the current version of Oracle and SQL Server. It was Database 4 at the time, DBase 4. And so Fortunately for me, with a couple of lucky breaks, I was able to come to this country, and I just kept going with taking computer classes. After working in that seafood restaurant for like a year and a half, and saving some money and taking computer classes. And then from then on, I took a lot more computer classes. I'll tell you one funny story about computer classes. So when I was learning Oracle 8 at the time in 1990, 99, 2000, Books A Million used to sell the Oracle books for $80. And they had a 30-day return policy. And I was so broke. I read this book 1,000+ pages in 29 days. And I took it back to the million, and they gave me back the money, which I used to survive for a couple more days. This is really hard, but I had to do that in order to keep going. But I say this because you asked about the importance of education. It is the things I experienced in Cameroon and studies and the classes I took here that I was able to have a job in the IT industry and work for Fortune 500 companies, this Prince George's County government, Baltimore City government, and eventually went to law school. Yeah.
Wow. Man, I have to go back and recap some of the things you just said. So basically, you started off in Cameroon, not having enough money to go to college, go to university. Your dad sold a chainsaw to get you started. You go through school, graduate, not a lot of opportunities. You begin to sell clothes at school campus, eventually come to the U.S. And I remember you said with just $100 in your pocket.
With $100, 14 hours, so 18 hours of flying time, and I was tired. I got to Chicago, and the flight connecting to Ohio, where I was supposedly going to school, was canceled. I should have stayed at the airport and not spend the $100 I had. And not knowing how the country works, with the shock, a busy airport, I decided to spend that money in a hotel, which I did not even sleep all night. And I spent $85 to rent the room. The following morning, I came to the airport to connect to the school I was going to with just $14 and change.
Wow.
And some guy sitting next to me, his name was Mr. David Nelson. And he lived in Cincinnati, Ohio. Sitting by me, you could see that I was visibly exhausted. He asked where I was from. I told him I'm from Cameroon, West Africa. I'm going to Akron, Ohio. He asked if somebody was picking me up. And I said, no. He said, well, I can give you a ride. Okay. He gave me a ride, a 45 minutes ride from Akron, a local airport, to the school I was going to, Akron University. And it was closed. There was nobody to receive me. So he said, well, do you know anybody in the country? I said, I have relatives in D.C., but they don't know I'm here. And he said, well, I can't take you to my house. You're going to have to go there. And I said, I have only $14 on me. So he actually left me right there on the corner of the road, but came back and said, well, you need to go to D.C. because I can't leave you on the corner of the street. And I can't take you to my house either. So he gave me $60 and took me to Greyhound and gave me an additional $20 to eat, just in case I get hungry, and so I can eat. And he's this very gracious guy who didn't know who I was, but just I think he could see in me I was visibly exhausted. I have no help, and he decided to help me, and I'm still grateful for that. I tried to reach out to him several times, but he forgot who I was. They had this phone system where when you call, you have to announce yourself before they can let you in. So I tried a couple of times, and he didn't answer. And one day he did answer, but then that was the last time I spoke to him.
Yeah. Wow, that's an incredible story, and it just kind of makes you think about the power of acting on faith. Because you were coming here with $100 and faith that you were going to be able to figure it out, and God, things came together. God put things together for you. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, knowing what I know today, I would not send somebody to the United States of America with $100.
Yeah.
I would, yeah, but there we are.
So now you're in the U.S. You're in D.C. now.
Yes.
What's DC like? Because I haven't had a lot of experience in DC. I did go to my Purdue Global graduation. Was in DC. It was my first time there,
Okay.
2022. DC is known as Chocolate City in the Black community. People talk about how empowered Black people are in DC and in business and government. What was it like coming from Cameroon to the DMV area? What was that like for you?
It was, so first of all, I came in the summertime in June. And why is there sunlight at 9 p.m. in the afternoon and in the night? 9 p.m. To me, 9 p.m. is probably 3 a.m. in Cameroon. So I'm 3 a.m. here at 9 p.m. here. But why is there sunlight? So that was the first shocking thing to me, because we don't see the sun at 9 p.m. That was one. Two, the time differences completely threw me off for several weeks. And the shock that my family's not here, but I got some kind of consolation because there's a lot of Africans and a lot of people from Cameroon here, some people I know. So I took solace of the fact that I knew them, they were here. It was a little comforting. And as time went on, I kind of blend myself into the community or into the society and was able to integrate into work, school, and a few other places. But the other thing was, I could not fully or correctly understand when people spoke. When they said something to me, I couldn't really understand. They couldn't understand what I said, whenever I said something to them. So that whole thing went on for a couple of months, and it was not very easy. But fortunately, I was able to get used to the community, and just kicked off from there.
Now, how old were you when you first got to the U.S.?
I was 26.
26 years old. So basically, you starting over in a new country, you basically starting from scratch at 26, not knowing anybody. You're in the U.S. and you got to figure this thing out.
Yes, I started from scratch, because, so when I came in there, I had to take computer classes. So at the time, Microsoft launched a couple of certifications for you to become a systems engineer. It was A+, Networking Essentials, TCP/IP Enterprise, Network Enterprise plus Internet, and a host of Microsoft applications that you need to learn to become a Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. So I had always made up my mind that once I'm in the United States of America, I have to make it work. So I launched to this program, and for 3 months, that's all I did. And I was able to take the certificate. I was able to take 6 certifications in 28 days, something that was never done before.
Wow.
So I became a Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer in a very short period of time. And then I also took Microsoft Certified Database Administrator with SQL Server. And I also took Oracle Database Administration classes. And that's how I started working for Booz Allen and Hamilton in McLean, Virginia for a couple of months. I worked for Prince George's County government right there at Lago. And then I worked for Baltimore City Housing. And then I worked for Mayor's Office of Information Technology in Baltimore City for 20 years, I think. And while there, I was responsible for running the databases for all city services, all support applications from police, housing, general services, DPW, liquor board, all city services you can think of in Baltimore City. We were in charge of it.
Wow. So let me back up here. So wait a minute. So you come to this country because it's a lot of people who are maybe in their 20s. They're thinking, I'm too old to go back to school, or I don't have time to, start a new career. Or there are a lot of people who come from other countries and they come here and they're thinking, oh, I just want to make some money and get a job. And they're thinking it's simple jobs. And you're going straight for what a lot of people would consider to be one of the best jobs in the U.S., to be a computer IT software guy. So what are your thoughts on that as far as, what gave you that spark to say, I'm not just going to the U.S. to feed myself. I'm not just going to get a job or just kind of make ends meet, but I'm going there to strive for excellence. What gave you that belief in yourself, and also to feel like, you weren't too old to continue your education?
I had always had a very strong, dogged belief in what's possible about America. Even when I was 12 years of age, I remember I used to listen to Voice of America when I was 12 with a small band, A-band radio that was hooked up to my bed, my little dinky 4x4 bedroom in Cameroon. So I'd always had this belief that this country is a country of possibilities. Like once you're here, and I used to hear also that there was a lot of money here, which wasn't the case on the streets. But then the opportunities here were not something you could just watch and let it go by. The same opportunities that I couldn't get in Cameroon, now I have it right in front of me. I'm literally living in it. So in my mind, I'm thinking, there's just no way I would sit and watch these things go by. Even at this age today, I still think that we wallow in opportunities that don't exist in more than half of the world in other places. And it just makes sense that if you find yourself in a place where you haven't been, where you spend 26 of your years not being in, and all of a sudden you find yourself in at the prime of your life, it just makes sense for you to say, you know what, I have to catch up on this. And not say age or I'm old or I'm exhausted, or complain or blame someone else for what you did or didn't do. It's just like, yo, this is the time, man. This is your time. You can see, you can talk, you can walk, you can drive on roads that you didn't even construct the vehicle. You didn't build the vehicle. You're flying in planes that you never built. You're enjoying freedom you never fought for. All those type of things, man, just give you reason to wake up in the morning and say, let's go. And not just let's go, tag along people who are able and willing to go with you. Come on, let's go. And so we could make changes together. Let's grow together, because that's what makes the world a better place. That's my opinion.
Gabe, if I could vote for you, I would. But you are very inspirational, and your story is, man, it is incredible. You've touched on so many things. Let me ask you this question. As you had this dogged belief in the opportunity in America, and obviously the dogged belief in yourself, during that journey, tell me about obstacles or challenges that you may have faced because of your skin color, because of where you're from, and how did you overcome those situations when they presented themselves?
You know, that's fun. That's very interesting, because I've always been somebody who don't believe in obstacles. And so I call those obstacles challenges instead of obstacles. Because in my mind, especially in this country, there is no obstacle I cannot overcome. It might be challenging for today, or for 2 days, or for a week, or for 5 or 6 months, or even for 5 years. But if you look at the title of my book, The Power of Dedication, Persistence, and Consistency, whatever it is that you're calling a challenge can be overcome. And at that point, it's no longer an obstacle. But once you call it an obstacle, you're telling your mind, now I have too much work to do. Absolutely. I have to fight too hard. And then that puts other things into perspective, like race and, skin color. I'm not saying that those things don't exist, but this is just my perspective of it. That's the way I look at it. And the way I look at it tells me, you know what? This is just a challenge. It's just a matter of time. Keep being dedicated, keep being persistent, keep being consistent, and you will overcome it. Now, some of those challenges I have seen, let's say, for example, in terms of business, is the rules and regulations I did mention to you about, which can be better if we decide to make changes, keeping personal interests aside and taking into consideration what ordinary people in this country deserve. We can make that happen. Now, when it comes to other types of challenges, if we could make it also easier for people who are willing, who come to the country as immigrants and able and willing to work, don't get them to sit on the bench for 5-10 years because of waiting for work permits. When we know fully well that these people come into this country for one and only one reason: work, pay their tax, make life better for themselves, their own children, and their own families.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to wait. I shouldn't have to wait 10 years to become a citizen of this country, especially with no criminal background and things like that. Those are some of the challenges that slowed me down in some cases. And then when I look at obstacles, it's usually not just for me as an individual, but when I look at children in our school system, in our educational system, struggling with an 8% in math proficiency in math, a 24% proficiency in reading, and a 76% proficiency or graduation rate. That's an obstacle to me, because if I consider myself someone who wants to rise with other people, the fact that somebody else's kid cannot perform at 100% proficiency in math or reading, or when they graduate, they can actually go to college, to me, is a challenge. Because now you look at it like, what society are we building for our own kids? Because I have kids in that public school, and the kids of my neighbors or my constituents and everybody else in the country. Now that becomes a challenge depending on how you're looking at it. But the way I look at it is from my own perspective as an individual, a community, a constituent, as a country as a whole. So I know we can fix this. We're the United States of America. We have the resources, we have the means. We just need to set the priorities straight, put the right people in office, and we can get all of the challenges overcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You touched on education. I want to get your thoughts on the value of college. There's a lot of conversations going on right now. Some people are saying, oh, college is no longer, it's not that big of a deal. You don't need to go. There's a lot of people also saying that, hey, you look at some of the wealthiest people in the world, they typically send all of their kids to college. And so what are your thoughts on college, the value of a college education, and the necessity of it to be able to be upwardly mobile in this day and age?
It's very valuable. And one thing I would say is, the moment you see someone saying, it's not valuable, part of it is because it's become so expensive for people to afford to go to school or send their kids to school, right? At that point, you start thinking about options. Like, okay, what am I supposed to do? Just drop out or go to YouTube and make some videos. Hopefully I can make some money. But I do think that education, speaking for one, my children and my friends and families, education is very valuable. Even if you're not going to use it, if you went the computer science in school and you don't use it, to get a job in computer science, you're not aware of the fact that the school you went through is actually helping you to do a lot of stuff, not making some mistakes, which some people who didn't go to school make. But it's very valuable because it guides you, it grounds you with certain things. And knowing our society nowadays, which I don't think is also the proper way to do things, they will look at your school credentials before they offer you a job, So I think it's very valuable for people to go to school, and the government should also make it easy for people who are willing and able and who wants to go to school to be able to go to school. Because at some point in your life, you're going to need it. You will definitely need it. Because there's people who have been left behind because of the fact that they don't have a certain level of education as required by some Fortune 500 companies. And what can you do about that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so another question I have for you is, what advice would you give your younger self? If you could talk to young Gabriel, either, young Gabriel back in Cameroon or young Gabriel recently immigrated to the U.S., knowing which now, all the lessons that you went through, the struggles that you experienced, the challenges that you've been able to overcome, the success that you've had, what advice would you give to your younger self?
So I would say I should have started early in entrepreneurship. I should have started as early and as soon as possible. And because I realized that what I was able to achieve when I started being in entrepreneurship, if I had started earlier, maybe 10 years prior, if I had a chance to, it would have made a lot of difference in everything else. It would have. The second thing I would have told myself is as an entrepreneur, there's sometimes you do make mistakes and you only learn through some of those mistakes. Some of those mistakes I made was that, remember I did tell you I opened up a second tire shop.
Mm-hmm.
So the mistake I made was whatever proceeds I made, I reinvested in the same line of business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when the business took a nosedive, I had nothing left behind.
Mm-hmm.
So the moral of the story is, if you're running a clothing business and you make proceeds off of the clothing business, put it in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Put it in something else. So if 100 people start doing the same line of business that you are in, you wouldn't have to auction all your clothes for $1 each.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing that happened with the tire business. When so many people opened up the business, I had 3 trailer loads of tires. I had to auction it for $2. Nobody was even willing to buy it.
Wow.
So all the reinvestments that I was trying to recycle with the hope of making more money, I wish I tell young Gabriel, you should have done it the other way around. Put it in something else.
Absolutely. Wow. That's a huge nugget right there.
Yeah.
So next question I have for you is, Gabriel, and we're almost wrapping up here. One of my favorite quotes is by Sir Isaac Newton. He says, if I've seen further, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. I recognize that as I'm talking to people who have these success stories, there's always people throughout their journey, whether it be parents or teachers or mentors or coaches, there's always somebody who they can kind of point to and say, I probably wouldn't be here if this person didn't do this thing or say this thing or encourage me in this way. Who are some of those people who are some of those giants for you along your journey that helped you become the man that you are today?
So I actually mentioned this in my book, the first book. It was more of a relay for me, to the point where I got handed over like a baton from one point where I was almost not going to make it. And then somebody else picks it up from there, like a baton and a relay. And I'll get to a certain point. So there's a lot of people along this journey, starting from my parents, who, like I told you, didn't get a chance to go to elementary school at all. They tried their best up to the point where it was time for me to go to high school, and they couldn't make it. They couldn't afford it. And then my uncle took me over. Took me through high school, and when it was time to go to college, he was like, look, I can't, there's nothing for me to do. I cannot afford no more. And then my parents took me back and sold that chainsaw, and then I went to university. After the university, it was back to roaming the streets, selling clothes, and nothing else to be done. And then someone else, who's of late today, saw the goodness in me, saw the fact that I could be better if I could travel, and then sent me to the United States of America. Wow. And then, from a point, I took it upon myself. But while I'm here, I have been so grateful when I told you the story of Mr. David Nelson, who, if not of him, I would have known how to get to DC. When he gave me $60 and bought my bus, paid my bus fare. And while here in DC, I have some family members who have helped me in several ways, friends and colleagues who've pushed me in several ways, vendors, contractors. The list could go on and on, my family, my children, my wife. But overall, in a nutshell, all over, all across the time I have existed, there's one set of people whom, as Newton said, I consider giants to me. They are senior citizens. I forgot exactly who said this, that what these senior citizens will see sitting down, young folks like us will never see it on the top of the mountain. I always and have always learned so much from senior citizens because they know a lot. They've seen it, they've lived it, they know when you're going wrong, they've seen the time change. And so I always find time every once in a while, go to a senior citizen somewhere and talk to them. You're going to get something out of it. And that's why on my campaign literature, one of the things that's on there, take care of our senior citizens.
Absolutely.
Take care of them. Take care of them
Absolutely.
at the time, even on their last days, take good care of them.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Wow. Man, Gabriel, we're coming to the end of our time. I just want to thank you for taking time to share today. I'm so inspired. This is, I was sharing with my producer that I'm ready to go out here and do something after talking to you. Gabriel, could you tell people where they can find you, your social medias? Maybe before we wrap up, if you want to talk about the campaign, when the election is, share some of that for us, please.
Absolutely. So Gabriel for Congress is the website, and there you can find a donate link. All we need is $5, $10. And as you know, congressional races are very expensive. And as a long shot candidate, someone who depends solely on grassroots contributions and not taking any money from special interest groups or lobbies or banks or corporations, my campaign is running strictly from or powered by the people. So GabrielForCongress.com is the name. You can search me also on Facebook by just looking Gabriel for Congress, or just clicking on the Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube links on the webpage, and support our campaign in some way, because this whole thing is not about me. It's all about the ordinary working class Americans, people who look like us and think like us, and people who've moved to this country with one big dream to work, make life better for themselves, braving the jungles and the high seas to come here because of that mosaic that's America. I want to be the voice of those kind of people. And there are many more, there's a lot of them on the streets of this country, in the nursing profession, in the healthcare profession, in IT profession, in all the professions in the walks of life. I want to be that voice, someone who looks out for them, because that's how I grew up. It's the community I grew up in. That's the way I grew up in. And so I cannot be that type of representative who doesn't care about his own people. And so while we go knocking on doors, that's the message I carry with me. And if you see my truck somewhere, big sign, Gabriel for Congress on it, take a picture of it, tag me with it, donate $5, $10, because that's what we need to keep the campaign going. And for my books, you could get them on Amazon. Just look me up, Gabriel Njinimbot, my last name. All the 5 books will pop out.
Perfect. And we're gonna link. Yeah, I would say we're gonna link those books, so anybody who's watching this video can tap into those books. Gabriel, thank you so much. You truly have an American dream story, a rags to riches story, and I really believe that you will be an excellent representative for the people in your district. And so, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you.